We're now on Daf Mem Daladam and Beis Lo Kash. Kan b'migdash, kan b'gvul. When Rabbi Yochanan said that our Rava is halacha Moshe Sinai, he meant in the Migdash. Outside of the Migdash, b'gvulin, then we have a Yesod HaNevi'im, which means that the Nevi'im established a new mitzvah of our Rava. It's not part of the mitzvah d'oraisa. And this was a mitzvah that was performed only one day out of the 7 days of Yom Tov. And that was the minhag HaNevi'im. So we have now machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua ben Levi regarding this established custom in Gvulin. Rabbi Yochanan says that in Gvulin, our Rava was established as an obligation by the Nevi'im. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi holds that it's only a minhag, it's only a custom. We also, by the way, after the Churban, we have a 1 day Zecher Le Migdash with regard to the Arava, and that's on the 7th day of Sukkot. Omer Rabbi Ami, Arava tzricha shiur. Now, what does this mean, Arava tzricha shiur? I'll tell you what it does not mean. We already learned earlier in Masechet Succah that the Arava, like the Hadas, has to be 3 tvachim in height. And the lulav, if you recall, is 4 tvachim, 1 extra tefach in height. So it could not be that when Rav Ami said that Arava needs a shiur, that he means the shiur of the height of the Arava. Because that shiur clearly, if you're talking about the height of the Arava, the minimum height of the Arava, that's 3 tvachim. So as we go through this sugya, we're going to try to see what Rabbi Ami had in mind when he said Lula Arava tzricha shiur. The Einan, he tells us, Ela b'fnei atzma. In order to fulfill the mitzvah of Arava, it's not enough that it's together with the other 3 minim, but it has to be taken by itself. Which seems to be repetitious. He just finished saying that it has to be taken alone. So why do you have to repeat himself and say that you can't fulfill your mitzvah together with the other 3 minim? Obviously, the mitzvah of Arava requires that to be taken alone. That's the Gemara's kasha now. Even the Omer Mar. Once Rabbi Yama had established that Einani tells El B'fnei Atzma, the Arava has to be taken in and of itself without anything else. Then Pshita, I certainly know, he's not taking it by itself. More answers, the same I would have thought, Hani Mili Hecha Delo Agbi V'Hadar Agba. Aval Agbe V'Hadar Agba Ema Lo. I would have said that if you take the lulav only once, then the Arava is part of the mitzvah of lulav. But if you took the lulav a second time, you've already fulfilled your mitzvah of lulav, then it's as if you took the Arava on its own, because what mitzvah do you have once you've taken the lulav on the first round? It must be the mitzvah of Arava. Kamash Malan, that's what Riyami wants to tell us, that you must take the Arava by itself, period. Even if it's clear to everyone that you're taking the Daled Minim for the sake of the Arava because you've already fulfilled the mitzvah of Daled Minim, nevertheless, after fulfilling the lulav obligation, you have to take the Arava out of the lulav, separate them, in order to become the separate mitzvah of Arava. Of Chizda Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Adam Yotzi Dechovasa Ba'Arava Shebelulav. Here we have machlokas between Rav Chizda in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak on the one hand, and the Gemara of Rabbi Ami on the other hand. Because Rav Chizda, in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, holds that you could actually take the lulav together with the Arava together with the lulav, and you could be Mekayim the mitzvah of Arava. Again, what you'd have to do is you'd have to take the lulav once, put it down, pick it up again. Clearly, the second Hagba or Lakicha is not for the sake of Lula, but rather for the sake of the Arav. But the fact that the Arav is mixed together and bound with the other minim, that doesn't bother me. That's what the opinion of Rav Chisda is. Now the Gemara comes back to Rabbi Ami's original statement that the Arav needs a shiur. V'kama shiura. What is the shiur? The Gemara wants to know, what does the Arava look like? How many leaves did it have on it? How many stems? We're not talking about the size and the height of the Arava. That we know already is 3 tvachim. The answer is Shlosha Bade Olim Lachim. We need 3 olim. Now, normally, 3 badim. We'll get to olim in a minute. But normally, all we need is 2 badim of Arava in the mitzvah Arava integrated into L'kach L'machem with the other meaning. But when we're being Kakayim, the mitzvah Arava unto itself as a separate mitzvah, which is either derived from Allah Moshe Sinai or from the word Arvei Nachal, then we need Shlosha Badim, according to Rav Nachman, 3 Badim, and the Olim, the leaves attached to these 3 Badim, are Lachim. They haven't been dried. That's always the challenge with the Arava, that it dries very quickly. Rav Sheshes Hamar, he says you're being machmir way beyond the letter of the law. Afilu ola echad ubad echad. All you need is 1 bad, 1 stem, 1 branch, and on that branch there's 1 leaf. 1 leaf on 1 branch. Could you imagine? So Gemara immediately rejects this. Ola echad ubad echad salka daitach? What kind of mitzvah of Arav is that if you have 1 single stem with 1 single leaf attached to that stem? As we say in Yiddish, das kenit sein. Ella ema filu ola echad b'bad echad. So take a look at how things changed over here from the Havamina to the Maskana, so we get an idea of what the Maskana is. In the Havamina, we said ola echad ubad echad. In the Maskana, we're saying ola echad b'bad echad. So what exactly changed there? What was the Havamina and what was the Maskana? It seems that the Havamina was that ola echad ubad echad. You've got a stem and an ola. They're not even attached. Just take the stem and take the ola. Tomorrow says salka daitach, but rather we rewrite it ola echad b'bad echad. You've got 1 branch and there's 1 leaf on 1 branch. Now, on the side, I would like to mention that there's a whole discussion here about what the height of the Arava is, because in the mitzvah of Lulav, we need an Arava 3 tvachim. But when the Arava is taken separately, we see it has its own rules. You're talking about Ola Echad Ubad Echad. So you have 1 Ola on that single bad, and you yotzi the mitzvah of Arava Shebimigdash. And some of the Mefarshim want to say that there's no shear as far as the height of the Arava is concerned. And that would have an implication today in our minhag of circling the bima with the Arava. Ibu is Rav's father. Havika imno kami Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok. Now we have a whole slew of statements of Abba in the name of the great Tana, Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok. Number 1. Once I was in the presence of Rabbi Elazar, and I was listening to the questions that people were asking him. I see Ahu Gavra Arava Kameh. A person brought his Arava in front of Rabbi Elazar, asking him to check it. Shakil Chavid Velo Birech. Now, what did this person do with the Arav? Assuming he got the okay that this Arava is Kshera, what he did was chavit. Now, this is a little tricky. The word chavit in our language means he banged it on the floor. But in the Gemara's language, the word chavit means to wave it back and forth. And he did not make a bracha. Now, here we have an issue in the Mefarshim, exactly who was, when the Gemara talks about Shakil, Chavit, who are we talking about? The person who showed up in front of Rabbi Lazar, was he bringing the Arava to Rabbi Lazar, and Rabbi Lazar was Chavit, or was it the person himself in the presence of Rabbi Lazar, and Rabbi Lazar accepted it? But in any event, v'lo birech, there was no bracha. In other words, he accepted the view, the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Levi against Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said that Chibur Arava is a Yesod HaNevi'ah, which means it's a Chiyuv, and we'd make a bracha on. Rabbi Shimon Levi held, no. It's a Minhag HaNevi'ah, but we don't make a bracha. This Gemara is now supporting Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Another story. Aibu v'chizkia b'nei Barta de Rav Aisu Arava lekami de Rav. So the grandchildren of Rav were Aibu and Chizkiyahu. Now keep in mind that Aibu was the father of Rav, so it makes sense that Rav's grandchildren were named after their great-grandfather, which would be Rav's father, Aibu. In any event, it seems that the grandchildren, through Rav's daughter, brought the Arava for Rav to take on Sukkot. Minhag Nevi'im hu. Again, paskening like Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, that our Rav is only a minhag, and we don't make a bracha on a minhag. Omar Aibu Havi ka ibna kami de Rabbi Elazar Bereb Sadik Asal Kamiyahu Gavra Omar Le Kiryasa Isli. I'm a very wealthy person, he tells Rabbi Elazar, and I have villages. And Karmaya Isli, I own vineyards. And Zeis Isli, and there are olives growing on the vines. The Asu B'nei Kiryasa, and we're talking during Shemitah, and this individual, this very wealthy plantation owner, did not lock his gates, but rather during Shemitah he opened the gates. Umekashkishin Bikarmia. Makashkishin means to begin the process of plowing the vineyards. And the Ochlin Bizesa, they started eating the olives. Now, why were they eating the olives? The answer is because they were working in the vineyards, and they were plowing the vineyards, and they deserved some sort of a payment, some sort of a compensation for their work. So the deal was that they would be allowed to eat the grapes in the field, the olives in the field. Now this man comes in front of Rabbi Lazar and he's having second thoughts. Arich or lo arich? Mutter or asr? It's Shemitah, and now I'm using payroll Shemitah, which are sanctified with Kedusha Shemitah, to pay my workers. Amalei lo arich. It's not proper. The Torah says liachla v'lo l'schora. This is a form of schora. To use payroll shvius to pay your wages, that's a violation of liachla. Have a kashavik Levi also on his way out. Omar, Rabbi Lazar was so nispal from this man that he came to ask the question and he took it so seriously. He declared Kiddu, Havisi Dairi Bi'ara Hada Arboim Chon. It's already 40 years I'm living here. Velo Chamisi, I never saw Bar Enosh, a human being, Mahalech Bi'archan Detakni Bidin, that he goes on the path of tzidkus. He's a tzaddik. He's a righteous individual. I've never seen a person in the long period of time, 40 years I'm here, who's as righteous as this person. Hadar v'asi v'amalei. Apparently, the man heard his praises as he was going out, and he returned. Why did he return? To ask Rabbi Lazar the following question: My mi'avid. What should I do now? I have these workers, and they're getting olives. What should I do? Should I stop them from getting the olives? In other words, once he heard his praise that he had taken the halacha so seriously, he began to contemplate, what do I do now in this situation? Rabbi Lazar, the great Tana, has told me this is not right. How do I rectify the situation? Amalei, Rabbi Lazar said to him, Afkar Zesa lechashokaya. Chashokaya is miloshen choshech. And apparently the destitute are called choshech. It's like they live in the darkness, or sometimes they don't have enough food to eat, so their complexion turns dark. And he said to him, Afkar Zesayu, declare your olives hefker. The same pritayo lekishkuche kramim, and take money out of your pocket to pay these fellows who are doing the hoeing in the vineyards, so that the peiros of Shvius will not be used as payment because you're making them hefker, which is exactly a fulfillment of the mitzvah of Shvius, and you'll square off with those workers and pay them out of your pocket. Wait a second, we don't find that Rabbi Lazar objected to this person as far as the workers hoeing the land. He only objected because they were being paid with Peiros Shvius. Are you allowed to hoe and work the land during Shvius? V'asanya, we learned in a brisa, V'ashvius tishmetena unitashta. Nitashta means you have to leave your land fallow without doing work. Tishmetenu milakashkech. The brisa says that you're not allowed to hoe the land. Unitashta milasakel, from removing the stones and clearing out the rocks. In any event, why is it that Rabbi Lazar Reb Tzadok was only opposed to paying these workers by using Kedusha Shvius, Peiros Shvius? What about the work itself in the land? Amarav Ukva, Bar Chama, Treikish Kushei Hava. For this year, this is a very important Gemara, very important. There are two types of hoeing the land. One is in order to improve the growth, to increase productivity. That's also during Shvius. The other is to see to it that it doesn't dry out, just prevent it from drying and withering away. Chad stume pile. In one case, there are pile. Pile are crevices in the ground. And if you don't do the hoeing to cover the crevices, then the roots of the tree will dry out. So by covering them, you actually stimulate moisture, and the roots of the tree can flourish. If you don't do so, the roots of the tree will dry up. Chad avruye ilane, which means that he wants to make the ground loose or soft, and he takes the hoe and he pierces it, he's softening the ground. And avruye ilane us. It's prohibited to implement this action of piercing the ground around the trees to make it loose and soft, because that's considered to be causing the growth of the peiros. But stume pili shari. But if you want to use the hoe to cover over these crevices, that's mutter, because there you're just keeping the tree from perishing. So during Shemitah, we're not allowed to plant something in our garden, but that which has already been planted, if we want to save it and protect it from withering away and getting completely destroyed, those actions are permissible. Omar Aibu Mishum Rabbelos Tzaddik Al Yahalif Odom the Arve Shabbos Yosef Micholosh Parsos. Now, this is a type of Gemara where you say Mutav Chi Shogin. It'd be better if we didn't know this Gemara. A lot of people take trips and they embark on journeys on Erev Shabbos, but the halacha is very strict about this. From daybreak, they allow you up to 3 parsos. 3 parsos, if a parsa is 4 meal, then that's equal, each meal is 2,000 amma, to 8,000 amma. And that's the distance that you're allowed to travel on Erev Shabbos, 3 parsa. I have a note here. He says it's about 2.2 miles. That's not a long journey. Now, not only does he have to limit his journey to that part of the day that it would take him to walk 3 parsos, but he's got to start calculating that in the morning. And we're afraid that if he does it in the afternoon, he'll only arrive at his destination late on Friday before Shabbos, and they won't have time to prepare the Oneg Shabbos, whatever food they need for covered Shabbos. Amar Rav Kahana. By the way, the poskim say that in our day, we don't calculate distance, we calculate time, because we travel by car. And, in 5 minutes, we can travel, 3 parsos. Lo amar an el lebese. We're talking about a person who's going home. Avalush pize, if he's going to an inn, then amai dinokit samich. A person who goes to an inn, and in those days you had to bring your own food, the innkeeper did not offer you meals, so obviously he's going to be well equipped with his meals for Shabbos. So therefore, that limitation doesn't apply. But if he's on his way home and he's going to have to prepare the food himself, then we're very nervous and concerned that he'll get there too late. Even if he's going home, and that means that Kolshkein, if he's going to Shpizecha, in other words, according to the second Lishna, Rav Kahana is worried, even in the case of Shpizecha, and how much more so in the case where he's going home, he may be able to rely on his wife and the members of his household to prepare Shabbos. So even if he gets home the last minute, the food is already prepared. But in the case of an inn, we're not going to rely on the fact that he's carrying with him enough food for Shabbos. We want him to get there early enough that he can prepare all his food for Shabbos. Rav Kahana b'didi avi uvda. I actually had this situation. I left too great of a distance on Shabbos, on Friday, and by the time I got there for Shabbos, afilu kasa deharsana lo ashkeche. Like the minimum oneg Shabbos is kasa deharsana, is to take a small fish and fry it in flour, and I wasn't even able to do that. I didn't have enough time. So b'didi avi uvda, meaning I suffered from this because I didn't, it was before the halacha was formulated, and I came home too late. Mitzvahs lulav ketzad. How does one fulfill the mitzvah of lulav? Ani Tana Kame der Rav Nachman, Sudrin al Gag ha'Itztava. Now we're talking about the Harabayis. And they brought the lulavim on Erev Shabbos to the Harabayis. Where did they put it? Where were the lulavim stored on Erev Shabbos? And according to this brisa, it was al gag ha'Itztava, on top of the roof. Omalei Rav Nachman says to him, here we turn to Daf Mem Hey, v'chili yabshanu tzarach. This seems idiosyncratic. To put the lulav on top of the roof so that it dries up in the sun, Ela Ema, rewrite the brisa, and the brisa should read al gav ha'Itztava, not al gag ha'Itztava, but al gabi ha'Itztava, meaning put it on top of the benches, and on top of the benches there is a protective shield that overlooks the bench, and that's going to prevent the sun. That's going to protect it from drying out. Amar Rachva, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Harabayis stav kafel hoya, stav lifnim mistav. There were rows and rows of benches, one and then another one. So there were plenty of benches. There was one row within another row, and therefore there was plenty of room to store their lulavim on the Harabayis. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on Daf Mem He.